let's go. You lead the way. Where are we headed? Towards a net zero future, of course. Cleaner water, more electricity, a sustainable society. That's the destination we've set ourselves. This we know. Yes, we know exactly where we're going, but we need to get there quicker. So, let's build on the progress we've already made by working and walking together. With the right partners, tools, and ideas, we'll become an unstoppable force. This we know. Right now, there are businesses who are putting technology and sustainability at the heart of everything they do. Brave leaders turning maybes into realities and building something better for everyone. Now is the time to look to the future and reinvent ourselves today, empowering others to do the same tomorrow. Yes, we know what the future holds, and we know how to get there. So, let's take charge of the journey today.
Hello, and welcome to Glasgow, and welcome to the art of convergence in e-mobility. My name's Andrew Smart. I'm a Senior Managing Director at Accenture, and I was about to say a select, but I think actually a self-selected industry executive who, with a number of my colleagues a while back, stacked hands with a view to bringing our industry capabilities together with a view to helping with the energy transition. So it's no coincidence that today, we're going to spend the next hour thinking about how convergence, can really lend itself to maximizing the benefits of the huge potential and the very exciting potential that e-mobility has to offer. And very specifically to think about right at that point of convergence between supply and demand to create a charging manifesto that we'll look at through the lens of the customer, through the infrastructure rollout, through the attraction of investment, and also for the balancing of the end-to-end system. So I'm delighted to have with me today an amazing panel. It's been actually very humbling to not only realize, quite who it is who's leading the innovation across the sector today, but also the amazing longevity and expertise that is at the helm of our industry. And so, as has become the way, we have a hybrid panel. So online here today with us, we have Ariane van Eck, the CEO of Innogy e-Mobility. We also have Brigitte Courteau, the CEO of Free2Move. And here in Glasgow, we have Fiona Howarth, the CEO of Octopus Electric Vehicles, Roy Williamson, a senior advisor to the industry, and our very own Sander Tjuslik, who leads Connected Energy for Accenture. So, as is the way with these things, I think it's crucially important when we think about these different dimensions that we always come back to the primary topic, which is the customer and the customer experience. So, Sander, maybe you could help us by kicking off with maybe the best and the worst that's out there, and maybe what our aspiration should ultimately be for the charging experience.
Thank you, Billy, and it's a real honor to be here with those industry experts in this panel. And what a great question to start with the customer, right? So let me start with the good. Have you ever driven an electric vehicle?
Indeed.
I mean, it's an amazing experience, right? And so this is what every EV driver will tell you, right? And also it's so quiet, so there is noise cancellation. Another major benefit of switching to electric mobility is the convenience of being able to charge when you're parked, right? And especially for those infrequent short-distance travel, like work-home commute, I simply need to charge when I'm parked, either at home or at work, or while doing shopping at my local supermarket. So that burden of actually having to go to a fuel station to refuel my car is completely gone. And of course, we are at COP, right? So, I mean, electrifying cars and vans and buses is obviously good for the planet. I mean, just in Europe, more than 20% of CO2 emissions are coming from road transportation. And this is also why European Union has set aims to have at least 30 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2030, combined with 3.5 million of public charging infrastructure installed. And we see the similar level of ambition also in the United States with the Biden administration. So, but just to put things into perspective, right? Today, in Europe, we only have 3.1 million electric vehicles on the road and less than 300,000 public charging stations installed. So this is a 10-fold increase, both in number of electric vehicles on the road, as well as the charging infrastructure to be installed in just 8 years to deliver on these ambitious targets. So this is really what's at stake when it comes to, getting to net zero with e-mobility. But it's not because the government says it's good for the planet and says these ambitious targets that people will adopt electric vehicles at scale. Because today it's just asking them too much effort. The adoption barriers are too high, especially when it comes to public charging experience. Because today the reality is that the public charging experience is not reliable, is fragmented, and it's complex. And yeah, it's just asking too much sacrifice from me as an EV driver. So if we want to mainstream EVs quickly, we need to really solve for these adoption barriers. I mean, today, 1 out of 6 charging sessions goes wrong. Problem that virtually never happens at a fuel station. Another burden that EV drivers experience today is this fragmentation of experience, right? So it's very difficult to find and pay for a charging session, and people need to go through dozens of apps just to be able to start a session. And finally, also, there is just simply not enough charging points that we need more charging points to be installed where we most need it. For instance, in Germany, today, there are around currently 17 electric vehicles per charging point, whereas 10 is considered an optimum. And as a consequence, you need to be lucky enough to find an available charging stations in city centers and even along the motorways. So the acceptance of electric mobility really largely depends on this charging experience. If we are really to kind of mainstream that and reach the targets that the governments have set before. But because if difficult charging experience will really undermine people's trust and put people off electric mobility. And this is why also this cross-industry collaboration is so important, because no single company, even industry or country, has the scale and the ability to do this on their own. Ultimately, what we want to achieve is that we have a charging Actually, ultimately, what we want to achieve is to make the EV driving experience better than ICE one, right? And this is all about making this charging experience convenient, simple, and reliable, so that in 2 years from now, I should be able to go from Amsterdam in the Netherlands to Bordeaux in France in the same amount of time as I would do with an ICE vehicle, because this is what's needed to mainstream electric mobility with this charging experience.
Fantastic. Well, I think you've set out the challenge very nicely there, Sander, which is, the essence of COP. So that's good. We like a challenge. So, Fiona, I know you've been passionate about this sector for many years, but you're pushing the boundaries now. So, I know that also that its convenience, I think, was the touchstone of what you described to me. In terms of what you've been focused on for Octopus, how does that respond to some of Sander's challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with Octopus EV, we try and make it as easy as possible to switch to EVs as we can. So, from choosing your car, so we've got independent impartial experts can help you select from 35 electric cars now, different models. That's pretty exciting in itself. Through to getting a charge point at home, maybe an EV tariff where you can charge up in the middle of the night for a fraction of the cost, probably about 10% of what you might pay for the petrol or diesel equivalent. And actually, we do have a charging card, which integrates across about 10 different networks now in the UK, and it gives you access to 100,000 charge points across Europe, where you can tap and go, and it all goes on a single bill. And so part of the challenges that we're seeing, for example, with public charging is you might have a number of different cards, you might have a number of different apps, maybe you have to top them up, you don't really know what you spent. Do you know, I forgot my card. I forgot my electric use network card, and I did a road trip up to COP, and I was living this life without the card, and I was like, oh no, and I still don't know really what I've spent where in terms of topping up my EV to get here. But so it is a bit complicated, but the pace of change is so fast now. So I think the number of locations in which you can publicly charge your car is about double the number of petrol stations now in the UK, which is pretty exciting. And that's before you take into account that you can charge at home and charge at work, which many of us can. And then in addition to that, that's kind of doubled in the last 2 years. So that pace of change is hugely, very fast. And the other thing is that there's lots of different business models emerging. So it might be that classic, when you're driving your petrol diesel car and you kind of imagine this world of EVs, it's very natural for you to imagine that you're going to go and fill up your battery somewhere. But to your point, the reality is you can charge your car where it's stationary. It's like, it's a total mind shift. It's like, where's the dwell time? I hate the word dwell time. I need to find a new word. But where's the dwell time for you in your car? And like, is it at home? Is it at work? Is it at the gym? So one of the places I charged up on the way out was an Instavolt at a Bannatyne's gym. And actually, I wish I'd brought my stuff to go and use the gym. I was like, if I lived near here, I'd be here every weekend. It was gorgeous. And you could just go and top up your car if you didn't have a driveway. I might even go there anyway just to have a break. But there's lots of different places in which you're going to stop and relax. And actually then there's another business model that's emerging as well, where the Airbnb of charge points, where you can actually borrow your neighbour's driveway and your neighbour's charge point to fill up your car. And actually that neighbour might be renting that driveway out, that charge point, to different people, and then they start to make money off the back of using their asset, their charge point and their driveway to help other people charge up their cars. So actually maybe you won't be filling up at the Bannatynes if you're kind of passing through York. Maybe you'll be plugging in at your friend's house that you're staying at and you'll be charging up, or maybe you'll be plugging up at another local resident when you get to your hotel later that evening, if the hotel doesn't actually already have a charge point, which many do. So it's this proliferation of charge points in lots of different places, and the difference with kind of petrol or diesel, where you can't actually access that in lots of places. Electricity, you can. It's a completely different world. It's beautiful the way you depict that range of innovation that's still really just burgeoning. Yeah.
It may be a great opportunity, Brigitte, for you to comment. I think you've obviously brought partners together, industries together in many ways to break open some innovation. Maybe your reaction to Fiona's comments there.
Yeah. So hi everybody. I'm very glad to be here. It's a question of ecosystem. But first of all, I would like to highlight what Sandra said. We know that driving an EV car is so wow, changing the way of mobility. It's so exciting and so on. And the reality today that 80% are recharging at home. So being able to have at home, wow, some of burden is have to change on the go for the customer. When the customer and Sandra want to go from Paris to Amsterdam, I've heard you. So we need to change this part. We will not do it alone. It's a question of ecosystem partnership. If we talk about the charging station, we need to have this one card, one app, being able to recharge with all the different CPOs. So proposing a solution, a seamless solution to the customer. We also need to provide some kind of packages to the customer in order to use green energy because it's also a question of mindset. When we drive an EV car, it's also because we are part of the world, we want to change the world, and we need to be able with partners to provide with green energy our customers. And this is really a question of if we want to deploy, if we want to have a fast charge, a strong fast charge network, we also need to do it not only with energy provider, but also with partner being able to settle in some place, people, investors who have the money and so on. So if we want to provide the best customer experience tomorrow in order to change this EV world, we have to partner.
Fantastic. And I do think, it's very interesting, the theme between the customer experience and the linkage to the infrastructure requirement. Clearly, a significant amount of work, still to be done, and many parties, needing to be involved, Brigitte. So, Roy, maybe, from your vantage point, you're working with many players, who are, looking to find their way in. What are your reflections on the rollout?
It's very interesting hearing the different perspectives. So I led BP's entry into this space over the last couple of years, and more recently now advise across the value chain, really, from battery companies through to charging operators and private equity investment in this space. And I guess a couple of thoughts. One is we're trying to get a fair system and an efficient system, really, and the fair system has to be policy driven. So the government does have a role here, and COP is a great forum for various different governments coming together to get aligned on what's the right level of regulation in this space. And that can be very basic stuff like plugs and access. It can also be education and communication, because I think you've just heard that people's perspective of the electric vehicle experience is often very different from the reality. So one of the things we need to do is educate people around how easy it is relative to their existing experience. But also I think government has a role to incentivize innovation in this space and keep the ball rolling. And Octopus Energy are a classic example of how people are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible in this space. But I also think it's important that the government doesn't get in the way of intervening where they shouldn't be intervening. And certainly the operators in the marketplace are looking for a competitive market. There's a recognition that to get the fairness, you need to consider this a public good. Therefore, you need to be able to help subsidize those areas where the market is not working, and often that's rural areas, sometimes that's areas where there just is not an economic case for a charge point. So finding the right model for that, getting a sort of hybrid solution between letting the market operate and also providing the black spots in the market, if you like, with solutions, I think is part of the way that we can collaborate for success in this space.
I mean, I think that balance between, if you like, the premium and the access for all, in order that we get a broad-based rollout, I think, supremely important point. And you spoke there about the role of government, and I guess government operates in many stratas, Roy. And I know, Ariane, when we spoke, for all your focus and drive for innovation, I know, you've hit some very practical barriers in terms of alignment of the parties. Maybe you could speak about how you see that and how you see that we could make progress on that basis.
Yes, thank you, William. And warm regards from Germany. The regulatory framework, if you want to scale quickly, is of course very important. And what we see, the industry can do a lot of itself. Roy already spoke about plugs and communication protocols and all those things. I think the industry is perfectly capable of standardizing themselves and making sure we get international roaming in place, etc. What the governments can do to stimulate better is align what their goals are. We see, for instance, in Germany, if you want to put a simple box like this on your wall and you want to charge it with more than 11 kilowatt per hour, you need an approval from the local grid operator. That doesn't always work. If in Germany you want to, as a charge point operator, you want to put charging poles in the ground, you need the permits from the city, you need the approval of the grid operator again. That takes an awful lot of time. And the central government says we need to roll out infrastructure quickly. The local government says, well, we need to think about whether we give you a permit, yes or no. And I know that a lot of investors in big cities in Germany have already pulled back because it takes too much time. And so here there is still a lot of alignment work to do, I think, within countries itself, and thinking about the role of the government that they want to play, and making that alignment across the local and central government.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I do see, the complexities start to emerge when we start to realize, how many parties are, genuinely involved, in this rollout component. And Fiona, I think when we spoke, you also highlighted, therefore, the potential benefits of more data transparency, so that we could see more of what was coming, maybe predict more what was needed and when, in order that this rollout is efficient.
Yeah, I can't really claim this as my point, actually. This came out of a conversation with one of our other panelists. But in terms of, when people are thinking about investing in charge points and where they're going to put them, actually the business case is based often around utilization, right? We don't have some kind of revenue guarantee at this point in time. So you need confidence that cars are coming. So we actually looked at these business cases a few years ago, and this was well before 2030 targets, well before ZEV mandates were on the table. And it's like, are the cars coming? Like a rapid charger had on average 1 charge a day. That's like £10 or something, if that, depending on how much they're charging. I mean, it's not a lot of money. And if you're putting in place a 50 grand rapid charger, probably a lot more now because they're much, much higher rated. So, 350 kilowatt charger, well over 100 grand to put that in place. £10 a day is not going to get you very far. So what you want to know is, where are the cars coming? How fast are they coming? Are there going to be 100,000 of them this year? Are there going to be 1 million? Are there going to be 2 million? And where are they going to be sold, right? And so actually, if they're being made in Europe, are they coming to the UK? Are they going to different countries? And of course, Tesla rolled out their charging network. They were in such a special position because they were selling the cars as well, so they could see where the cars were going to be sold, and they knew where the charging had to be. Whereas actually, the charging companies at the minute don't know that. But the car manufacturers need the charge point companies. The charge point companies need to know that from the car manufacturers. Perhaps we could collaborate.
We could make that work, indeed. And I do think it's interesting to compare and contrast, a first mover like Tesla that has so much, if you like, had to solve for itself, if you like, and therefore extended its business model in order to do that. And now we're thinking, how does the ecosystem achieve those same goals?
Yeah, and then they've got a lot of advantages in their dashboard as well, essentially. Their screen, if you haven't seen it, they don't really have a dashboard. They have an iPad, essentially. And you say, I want to go London to Glasgow, and it will tell you where to stop and how long it will stop, and half an hour before you get there, it will precondition the battery and all that kind of stuff. So it's really very clever, and us being able to bring some of that tech more into some of the other manufacturers is good. But of course, the good news is that they will be opening up that public charging network as well. So that will become available to non-Tesla drivers. So that's
open access, win. I think, crucially important. I think we need to, create that, that accessibility, across the network. And maybe, Brigitte, from a free-to-move standpoint, you maybe have, again, more components or access to more components within your ecosystem. How do you see, some of those challenges that Fiona just talked about being solved through the collaboration and the partnerships you've developed?
Yeah, Andrew, the question of the data is not an issue. As soon as we treat the customer, I would say, experience, we probably need the data from the customer in order to put the fast charge at the right place. But we also know where we need the fast charger. We need it on the highway, on the go. We need it on the parking places when you go for the shopping, and so on and so forth. So the question of the sharing data is not an issue. Of course, it's super clear. Now we need, as we said at the beginning, we need to do it. We need to deploy. We need to accelerate because everything will accelerate. So I agree on the fact that it's not an issue to share. It's more a question of investment, acceleration, bringing the right experience, the transparency on the pricing and so on, and being able at the end of the day to find the right balance between the stakeholders because we need it. But of course, sharing data is key. deploying is even more key.
So yeah, if maybe then, if data is one element of the lifeblood, if you like, of this fast and efficient rollout, clearly investment is going to be an equally crucial component. And Ariane, I know you've lived in, or you're in the middle of a transition between different funding models, if I could call it that. Maybe your reflections on how we, from those two vantage points, how we attract, more investment into the sector, and in order that we affect the acceleration that Brigitte spoke of there.
Well, the question is, how are the value chain partners going to develop? Where is the capital going to come from? We used to be part of an energy company. Energy companies are players in this game. The oil companies are coming. Fiona already said the CPOs and the car companies need each other. Car companies have funded CPOs as well. So there is a large group of parties that is bringing capital to make investments. And the question is, who are in there for the long run? And that's not an easy game for some of them. And what we see now is, for us as a simple technology company, we deliver the software and the hardware, and we see our group of customers changing at the moment. And I think it's a very interesting game in Europe at the moment. Who is going to have the longest breath and develop the strongest network? It's amazing what Tesla did with their rollout. Now, companies like Ionity, Fastnet, they're growing very fast. They have the capital behind it to do it, and it's going to be a very interesting development. Who is going to develop the highest speed? And for us, as we used to be part of a company, an energy company has different shareholders, and can they invest as much as is needed by other companies that have external capital and are fully focused on infrastructure? But maybe Fiona has an opinion on that role.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating as things open up, the number of balance sheets that are now coming into play, and obviously, Tesla's alone, is an intriguing one. Yeah. Roy, as you're talking to potential investors or even existing investors, what's their mindset towards?
I think we've reached a really interesting point in this market when it's evolved from being a kind of Wild West venture capital, high risk, high technology risk, high utilization risk, punt sort of market from the early days, with some great startups, many of whom have now been bought up by people like BP and Shell, by the way, and some of the energy companies. And it's evolving to become, really because of the scale of the investment. We're now talking about needing billions of dollars of investment, not tens of millions or even millions in the early days. It's not hundreds of millions anymore, it's billions of dollars. And in order to get that sort of finance, it's not going to come, in my view, from the corporates. It's going to come from private equity. It's going to come from the big funds. Maybe even the pension funds need to start backing this sort of activity. And for them to back it, the technology risk has to disappear, because they're not interested in anything that involves any technology risk. And that's pretty much happened. They need to have some sort of secure demand profile. To Fiona's point earlier, if you don't know that these charge points are going to be utilized any more than 5% of their life, then frankly there isn't an investment case. Yeah. So getting to the point where we can find business models that work, and that needn't necessarily have to rely just on charging. So we talked about revenue stacking, we talked about energy management, and the work that some of the other panelists are doing in providing energy management solutions to support a business case for putting down a charge. And by energy management, I mean providing vehicle-to-grid energy, provide storing solutions to help the grid management process. So I think there are a bunch of different ways that one can get to the answer. But if we are going to get the billions of dollars we need invested in this space, we're going to have this market grow up in many senses and not become the Wild West and become a much more predictable, rateable environment for the big investors to come in.
I mean, it's intriguing when we've already talked through many components of we focused hard in on charging, and we've already shown the degree of integration and collaboration and connectivity that's required, and you think of that then within the wider power system and how that operates. Maybe Sander, it would be useful to comment on what is the potential therefore, in terms of system optimization, how do we keep that balanced and make sure that, again, that it works, on behalf of the customer, but also on behalf of the system?
Yes, indeed. So, I mean, the characteristic of the electricity system that you need to keep it in balance at all times. So the electricity supply and demand need to be managed and kept in balance. And so traditionally, this is what we call kind of the flexibility, so the ability to regulate the supply and demand so that the system is in balance. And actually, traditionally, this flexibility needs were quite predictable and limited, but with the increasing share of renewables that are coming into the electricity supply, it's becoming more volatile, actually, because obviously the sun doesn't always shine when we want it, and the wind doesn't always blow. And this is creating new flexibility needs for the energy system. On the other hand, on the demand side, the demand patterns are changing. I mean, we have electrification of transport and heating, but also some consumers are starting to produce their own energy. And so this is as well making the demand patterns more volatile and unpredictable. And so if you combine those shifts in the way we produce and consume electricity, there's a new, we did a study actually of 6 European markets where that shows that actually the flexibility needs for the energy system will increase by 30 to 45% by 2030 because of these shifts. And this corresponds to, let's say, up to 90 gigawatts of new additional flexible capacity that needs to be put into the system in order to manage those situations where you have abundance of renewable energy but not enough energy supply, or where you have actually demand peaks but not enough that needs to be fulfilled. And so here comes the beauty of electric mobility and electric vehicles, because they are batteries on wheels. And so there is this huge potential that they can actually offer to the energy system, because they will naturally add additional flexible capacity, right? And in a way that they can, we can manage the batteries, that the speed or the time of charging through smart charging, which is actually already commercially viable, or as Roy said, the emerging vehicle-to-grid technologies, which would allow actually vehicles to put energy back to the grid when it's needed. But actually, here is the trick: this will only work if the EV drivers opt in at scale, right? So, I mean, otherwise, imagine if we would have all these 30 million zero-emission vehicles I talked about before, providing flexibility to the system when needed. And imagine if you can actually tell to those EV drivers, you can drive for free as long as we can use your batteries while you're plugged in when parked. But all of this will only work if EV drivers opt in at scale. So the question is, how do we show them the value that they can bring to the energy system so they are going to be plugged in at all time? I don't know, Fiona, did you have any experience with that, working with your customers?
Funny you should ask, Sander. So we have, at Octopus, as well as supplying energy to like 3 billion homes in the UK, we have the tech platform that supports that. So it's a billing and CRM platform which enables time of use pricing. And I came across demand-side response in 2010 and the idea of vehicle-to-grid. So I heard about this tech platform, and I was like, oh yeah, this is like a playground for me. So we've launched an EV tariff where you can charge up in the middle of the night for like 4 hours at a third of the cost compared to your daytime usage. And actually, we've had loads of people opt into that. And that is typically a kind of entry-level EV tariff, I would say. And then we have this next level tariff, which is the agile tariff, which follows the wholesale market price. So actually, it changes every day, and it's half-hourly slots throughout the day. You get the pricing about 4 o'clock the day before. And it's typically relatively cheap overnight. There's a peak around about breakfast. It's cheap again, and then between 4 and 7, it's really high because that's our peak consumption in the UK, and then it's cheap again. Now, it obviously varies depending on when the wind is blowing, when the sun's shining, and all that kind of stuff, and it will increasingly become so. And we made the pricing APIs available, and we've had smart charging companies integrate with those APIs, and actually other companies and battery tech and heat pumps, and they optimize for it. So my EV, for example, is optimized every day on this tariff, and so it just says, I just say I want 80% by 7 a.m., and it just fills me up when it's cheapest. And in fact, it sometimes goes negative, right? So sometimes we're paying wind turbines subsidies not to generate because we need to balance the grid. Like, no, don't do that. Don't pay these wind turbines to turn off. Pay our EV drivers to charge up. So last year, during a bank holiday weekend, it went negative, the pricing went negative, and one guy actually charged up enough to go like London to Newcastle and back, and he got paid £5 for pleasure. So it's like, here's your free fuel, and here's your donut and coffee to go with you. In fact, it was during lockdown, though, so I understand that he actually...
guaranteeing that for everybody who uses
I know, well, it varies.
People signing up with,
to be fair, though, it also works the other way around at the minute, right? So obviously the pricing has been hugely high recently at points, as we know, and so that tariff has also had peaks. So it's got the ups and the downs, and some people say switch back to Octopus Go during this period, where it's that kind of more predictable one. What I find interesting is, because we speak to a lot of people thinking about making that switch to EVs, the Octopus Go, which is the kind of set 5p per kilowatt hour for the 4 hours, that's very predictable. So therefore you can say, okay, if I drive 4 miles per kilowatt hour, you can start to work out that it's between 1 and 2p per mile. Right? And so this is really exciting, and people start to like work out these numbers, and they can start to see how much they're saving versus their petrol, diesel, versus the agile one is less predictable. So it's not as tangible in that way. So I quite like the Go for the kind of mass market at the minute. But the other thing is we've gone a step further, and we also do vehicle to grid. So we've got 135 drivers now with Nissan Leafs and market leading vehicle to grid chargers, so bi-directional chargers at their homes. And so we've done a very, very simple proposition in the first place, where they lease the car, the charger and everything. And if they plug in, I think it's 12 times a month overnight, we give them back £30 on their lease. Very simple. You make your asset available so that we can use it to help balance the grid. We'll get you charged by the time you want, and we'll give you a credit essentially on your lease to say thank you for letting us do that. But they don't take any of the risk around the battery or anything like that. That's all with us because it's a lease.
And you make it more affordable for them, right? So
yeah, it's much more affordable for them. And actually, we find they love it because there's so many more people engaged in, the net zero challenge ahead of us. There's a real community in this group of people that feel like they're helping us forge the path. And for me, it's less around the consumer challenge now. There's actually some regulatory pieces where that pricing that we were talking about, that's blurred at the minute, because actually we've got other things on top of that which are smeared across the time of use charging. So there's network operating costs, so DNO costs are smeared across every hour of the day, and then also essentially the tax from some of the net zero subsidies that we're contributing to, so things like the contract for difference, electricity market reform type mechanisms that then essentially get charged back to us through our energy bills. That's also just smeared across every time of day. So the actual differences between the cost throughout the day isn't as reflective as it should be. So we need to kind of start to think about those kind of things.
We can quickly see, as we come back to the customer.
Yeah.
I think you just, as soon as you're into contracts for differences, I think your average customer probably
we need to just simplify it for them. Yeah, make it super easy.
Yeah. So, and I think, Fiona, you spoke about, the early adopters who love all the data and love to calculate, some of those time of use value propositions that you described. But then you're now moving to that more ubiquitous, simpler model that brings others in. Is that how you see it?
Well, so I feel like there's the different levels, because what we found is that people, the kind of people like to get the simple option, and then they learn about some of the other stuff, and they kind of upgrade themselves. So it's a bit like when there's a pathway.
Yeah.
It's the same with tech, right? When you first got your mobile phone, actually, it wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is now, but then you kind of upgrade yourself. I remember the first guy that told me I should get internet on my phone, and I was like, really? Yeah. Well, I mean, I know, why do I need that? But clearly you can't do without it now. So it's a kind of pathway.
I see that, and I can definitely, those customer business models, really interesting to see how they're evolving. Maybe at times that we forget, the B2B side of this. And Brigitte, it would be great to get your thoughts. I know that, within your construct, you see opportunities for the fleet, if I can call it that. And maybe would be good to get your view how that same early adopter into mass adoption switch would happen there as well.
Yeah, Andrew, on our side, we consider that B2B will be the first main move, in fact, because you are able for a fleet to really help your customer to reduce its cost. It's really exciting to see that with our cars, we will be able to, I would say, help the question of the energy today. Because the main question, as Sandra said at the beginning, of the energy is the question of the storage. If tomorrow we are able to storage the energy, we will be able to reduce the cost and to put the right need at the right time. So when you take it from a fleet manager point of view, from a corporate company or company, when they have 100 cars, 500 cars, 500 EV cars, when you understand that they can be part of what we need in terms of environment, changing this world, but also be able to reduce its cost, because when you talk to a fleet manager, I will not say the only thing that matters, but the main thing that matters is to be able to reduce its cost. So you put the fleet. While the fleet is not used, you are able to put it as a storage and to give the energy to the energy provider. And when I would say the fleet manager needs the car, he programs the car, he said, at this moment of this day, at this hour, I will need it. It will be needed to be full recharge, and I can manage my fleet on the right way, and at the same time being able to reduce my cost. So what we are doing today is to start. We already started on our side in our plant in Italy, and we're starting with B2B customers, because we will learn. I will not say that this is we have found everything in terms of business model, but we want to start because we consider with the B2B is the probably, I will not say simplest, but I can put it into brackets, simplest way to learn, to see how our customer needs, how they are able. Is it, for instance, possible for all kind of customers or some typical kind of customers during the night and so on? So we really need to learn and to start from now, because it will be key in 2025 when the number of EV cars in the, I would say, on the energy grid will be so high that we will have an issue if we don't do it. So I would say the positive side is that, wow, cars now start to become a real advantage on this path, but not only all the fast charge, also storage. We'll be able to put, I would say, battery as storage, enabling the management of the energy grid.
Yeah, and Brigitte, I was fascinated to hear even how you were using your inventory, if I could call it that, your fleet also as virtual storage. Could you comment on that also?
Yes, of course. We already do it. We start that with it's in Italy with 500 Fiat 500e. So I will say the car is produced. The car is stocked in a parking place where you have all this system, the V2G system. So if there is no customer in front of that, the car can stay 1 week, 2 days, depending, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And during this period, it's a kind of storage. And as soon as we say we have a customer, the fleet manager, this new fleet manager, I would say program the fact that this car will need to have this level of charging for this date at this hour, because it will go to a customer. So this is really interesting to do it. One of the things we have to manage is the fact that During the summer, we do not produce. During 2 weeks, really, depending on the year or on the plant. So we need to manage this because as soon as we have this contract with the energy provider, he cannot, I will say, support the fact that we don't have those cars produced during the summer. So those concrete kind of things, we have to manage them. But we are doing the job today.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Almost unbeknownst, you become a power player. You become a critical component of the end-to-end system, and different risk profiles and different commercial possibilities as well. And maybe Arian, just in closing, out on that vehicle to grid conversation. Obviously, at the heart of that is the customer's concern about the life of the battery, the performance of the battery, and how do you ensure that you're a good, that your whoever you're partnering with as a customer is looking after your battery in your best interest. Thoughts in terms of how technology can enable that?
Well, a lot is already possible, and I think the example that Brigitte is giving is a good one, and we see the same with the large fleet operators for the last mile delivery. For the FedEx, the Amazons and the Deutsche Post of this world are developing now this technology as well, and they're creating on-site charging with own production of PV with batteries, creating a total solution that manages that, exactly what Brigitte described. And what is also the key of their business case is basically the electrical vans that are coming out at the moment have a far longer lifetime than the ICE vans that they use at the moment. And that is a very big part of their business case, is this longer lifetime and less maintenance cost that the electrical vans have in comparison to the ICE vans. And I think this is a factor. Therefore, the lifetime of the battery is probably the most important part of the car to manage, because the rest of the car can take much longer than an ICE car. So it's really interesting to make sure that this lifetime is maximum, because the difference between 2 years with a car or 5 years with a car is huge for a FedEx or an Amazon. And they are, exactly as Brigitte said, totally focused on getting the total cost of ownership down.
I mean, it's been fantastic to hear, if you précis our discussion here, the possibilities that we've just opened up in so many ways. Many of the, if you like, the holy grails, I think, for the industry in terms of, providing that customer experience and the value proposition that draws, customers and consumers into the industry. A technology that actually has a positive business case and a positive environmental case, associated with it, and an investment case that's going to draw finance, towards us, and the possibility to have the market open up in a way that does balance access and fairness, in equal measure. And I guess, finally and crucially, the possibility to help balance the system to actually therefore enable us to bring more renewables in, more storage in, and create a much, more carbon efficient end-to-end system.
If you think about it, the energy markets have been doing this for years. On, when the end of the game or half time in the game is everybody goes and puts their kettle on. Yeah, that sort of predictability. So why can't they just join up with the 500, Fiat 500Es and all the other data that they can get access to provide a holistic, system-wide balanced solution? It can't be that far away, I think. So
the balancing mechanism that makes that all work. Our vehicle-to-grid cars in the UK will be the first EVs to participate. So it's happening.
It's all happening, which is hugely heartening, because I think, Fiona, as we were about to walk on stage, I think you said actually we're in hundreds of work days, not thousands of work days, to make this scale, possible. And we're probably talking about the sector that's most ready for prime time.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to do it, it better be us,
It's gonna
I
happen.
think.
It's
and,
happening.
I think we've laid out the challenge beautifully. I can't thank all of my panelists enough for their contributions. I think our manifesto for charging, is well shaped, in that regard. And I thank, the friendly faces here in Glasgow in the audience for being with us here today. And I hope those of you online have enjoyed the discussion also. I do think it's we're looking for pathways for success, and I think we've painted a beautiful yellow brick road here today. So thank you all for joining. Enjoy the rest of COP, and keep driving.